Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your time-constrained hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and this is the show where we review all the anime series from the previous season we did and didn't watch start to finish. On today's episode, Deadly Deaths and Make-Believe Kingdoms. First, I will review the riveting adventure series Made in Abyss, and then John will talk about an unwanted job turned passion project in Sakura Quest. So yeah, compared to last time, this should be a short but sweet ride, so stay tuned, we'll be right back. Riko is a young girl and aspiring cave raider living in the town of Orth. So Orth is a very special place that is settled around a giant hole in the ground appropriately titled The Abyss, which is kind of the name of the show, which is titled Made in Abyss. So Riko shares a dream with many inhabitants in that city, which is venturing to the deepest parts of that alluring bottomless pit and to unearth its many precious artifacts and mysteries. Her main drive is the legacy of her mother, who gained the rare and prestigious title of a White Whistle, because the cave raiders are ranked by the color of the whistles they carry with them to call for help and everything. So I don't even know what the beginner whistles are, but I think the strongest ones are the white and black whistles, if I'm not mistaken. So her mother one day ventured to the deepest parts of the abyss and never returned. And Riko wants to follow in her mother's footsteps and hopes to find hints in the deeper layers of the abyss about where her mother disappeared to. One day she happens upon a very special artifact, the boy Reg, who not only saves her life and that of a classmate, but also turns out to be a robot whose origins seems to lie in the deepest and darkest parts of the abyss as well, even though he has no memory where he actually came from himself. Together, they descend into the many dangerous, curse-laden layers of the abyss, painfully aware that, just like Riko's mom and many cave raiders before her, this might be a journey of no return. This show is based on a manga by Akihito Tsukushi, and it's still running with currently 6 available volumes. And this is the only work so far, aside from doing character designs for the series Fairy Musketeers. Which I haven't seen. I don't know anything about that show.
First I've heard of it.
Yeah. But yeah, he's still working on that manga and still running. So, and this show is 13 episodes long for now, and it's produced by Kinema Citrus. We both have watched a couple of shows they worked on. Namely Black Bullet, which we have mentioned many times before, and Codebreaker. Both enjoyable shows with a few drawbacks here and there. But overall, like I said, enjoyable and overall well animated. I think there weren't any too bad looking parts in both those shows.
Yeah, they were both pretty solid in the animation department.
Yeah.
I remember, I think we both agree that Black Bullet kind of fell apart in the plot department, but...
At least at some point. Like in the beginning, it was kind of a solid setup, but then it felt like the show didn't really know where it wanted to go. The director Masayuki Kojima has mainly worked as a storyboard artist so far. For example, on 91 Days, a show we've also reviewed and liked a lot, and the aforementioned Codebreaker. Codebreaker, which was like a nice superhero-esque show, not super deep, but also, like I said, pretty enjoyable. I was surprised that we didn't get a second season of that, kind of, because I don't know, the ending wasn't super open or anything, but it lent itself really well to a sequel. So apparently it didn't really take off or anything, but it felt like it could have really not used, but I mean the story was kind of self-contained, but it felt like, hey, this could have gotten a sequel. I don't know why it didn't. Also had a really great opening. It's one of my favorite Grand Rodeo songs.
Oh yeah, that song was tight.
Yeah, really like it.
For some reason, as you were starting to talk, I thought I was going to say, I thought I got an OVA, and then I fact-checked myself, and I was like, I was super wrong. So, oops. But yeah, can't believe that all it had was just the series.
Yeah, kind of a shame. But if you're interested in like basically superhero stuff, maybe a bit of, I don't know, X-Men-ish, maybe go and check out that series. It's fun. But Kojima's big directional work up till now is a favorite anime of mine, and that is the anime version of Naoki Urasawa's Monster. Also a show with a really rich dance atmosphere that just pulls you in, and has that in common with this show. So I wonder how much influence the director itself had on that here, because it feels really appropriate. And he worked on both shows, and Monster was like a really, like I said, really atmosphere-rich show with a like densely populated with a lot of characters. The story was cool, but that show really like worked because of its characters, and I think in some ways it has a common ground with this show. Just from a visual standpoint alone, I think Made in Abyss is Kinema Citra's best work so far. The look of the show is stunning, just downright amazing. It blew me away when I first saw artwork and trailers for it, but like those don't even like remotely bring across how good the show looks in certain parts, like how well crafted the backgrounds are, how detailed the interior design is in parts, and it's just this fantastically crafted world that just pulls you in because it feels like a living, breathing organism. It's like you watch this and you feel like, okay, I can imagine being there, which in certain parts of that show is not a good thing. Because the Abyss is a hellish place, but we'll get to that. But yeah, it's a fantastic looking show. The character designs are a bit on the cartoony side, so that might turn off some people if they see that, like, okay, this looks like a kids show. Pretty big heads, small limbs, giant eyes, remind me a bit of Digimon in that regard. Not quite the same, but just in terms of a general design aspect. So it might not necessarily be your cup of tea, but I can only speak for myself. It grew on me, and they did good work, especially on the facial expressions and everything, to get you really invested into the characters. So yeah, really good, like, facial and body animation on that. And there are also some nice action beats, but what pulled me in the most was just how visually stunning and beautiful and scary and sometimes gross the world of the Abyss is, and how well the anime captured that. I don't know how much it improved in that regard over the over the manga, but I expect, just in terms of the coloring and everything and the scale, watching it on a big screen and stuff like that, it really adds to the design of the world and the atmosphere, that oozes from that material. So yeah, I don't know. Did you take a look at that show? Did it like come across as striking, just in terms from a design standpoint?
I mean, the character designs, yeah, they definitely stuck out to me. I mean, I didn't watch this show, but I follow this guy on Twitter who did, and he was raving about how much he loved it from beginning to end, for a lot of the same reasons that you've lined out now. But like, it was, I didn't watch this show mostly because, we both pick up so many different shows, and there's only so much time out of every week. I mean, that was my reason for not watching, because I had other things that more grabbed my interest. But there was nothing visually about this show that really put me off from it. It was just a lack of time.
Okay.
Maybe, and I say this about a lot of shows, maybe someday I'll go back and watch it, and I look at my backlog of shows and I'm like,
well, we'll see if I can motivate you to do so with the review, but there are some parts in that show that might be problematic for you, but we'll see.
I mean, I've managed to tough my way through some other stuff in recent years, like JoJo's and Attack on Titan, so.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll get to that. This is a different kind. I mean, Attack on Titan, maybe, but in terms of, I don't know, gut-wrenching stuff, this is a different beast. But I got to that. I want to quickly mention the music, because the composer is kind of unusual in that he isn't Japanese. He is a British guy by the name of Kevin Penkin, and he hasn't done that much work in anime yet, but he worked on 3 other projects besides Made in Abyss, and one of them being Under the Dog, which was a rather big Kickstarter success. Is the OVA out actually?
It is, and I have my Blu-ray, and I still haven't watched it because oops.
You should do that and tell me how it is because I
But yeah,
interested in that project.
yeah, because I did put some money into that Kickstarter as well as speaking of anime Kickstarters, as well as the Little Witch Academia one. So
All right. What did you get out of that?
I also got a Blu-ray out of that because
Okay.
I see these projects where it's like, yeah, I'd like to hold in my hand a copy of your finished product so that I can ignore it, but maybe hopefully someday watch it. Kind of like not anime, but I also kickstarted a couple other film projects. The one that the guys at Continue did, Smart Guys, as well as the 5 Second Films movie, Dude Bro Massacre 3. Was it Dude Bro Massacre 3? Or was the name longer than that? Either way, it was takeoff on all those stupid Halloween slasher films. Dude Bro Party Massacre 3, that's it.
Okay. What should I mean? The cool thing about Kickstarter, for me, is not getting. I mean, it's cool getting the physical thing and everything, but if the project works, you can buy that anyway. But I feel like if that, and if that project works out, you also have the, I don't know, emotional bonus of saying, "Hey, I helped make that," in a way.
Yeah.
Like that's a cool thing, and I think that's the attitude you should
Oh no,
put towards
definitely.
Kickstarters. Like I see so many people who just go in, yeah, and I get these amazing like bonuses and everything. I mean, that's a cool thing, and it's nice. That's nice incentive. But you should always feel like, in my opinion, and I know that's hard considering how some Kickstarters turned out, and I took part in one of them that went to shits, really. But you should.
I think it was one that we both took part in.
Yeah, and it's but you still should go, in my opinion, into these things like, okay, I'll invest in the potential of this. If this doesn't turn out the way I want it to, that sucks and that's bad, and especially someone fucked up. But I shouldn't try to get into this for my own gain, but because I want to see this project come to fruition and turn out to be
Oh
something
no,
cool.
definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, small tangent there, but that's a feeling I've carried around with me for a long time because I see so many people complain about Kickstarter. Oh, my bonuses suck, and yeah, sure, that is regrettable, but if the game actually turns out to be great and you help make that, that's amazing, and that sometimes should suffice.
I mean, I'm waiting on throwing any more money at any other interesting stuff I see. So I'm still waiting on a few projects to be delivered. Like, there was one game that came out recently that I backed A Hat in Time, and that turned out really good. So I'm glad for that.
Yeah, sure, exactly. So, back to Made in Abyss.
Anime!
Sorry. So, Kevin Penkin worked on Under the Dark 2, and I don't know about the music in that OVA, but the music in Made in Abyss is great. It complements the visuals really well, it enhances the atmosphere, establishes a sense of dread when appropriate, or brings some levity when needed. So it's great stuff. I really enjoyed it. So let's talk about the show. It's, the story and characters and everything. The beginning of the show, in regards to tone, reminded me a bit of older PS1 RPGs, like, for example, Grandia. I don't know how many of our listeners have played that, but it's like this kind of cool, cartoony adventure game RPG that takes like a party of children and have them, explore hidden mysteries of a lost civilization, and it's full of adventure and danger and fun and everything. So yeah, I really enjoyed that game series, and the beginning of the show just reminded me of that first Grandia game in a lot of ways. I don't know why, it just struck a chord, and I was like, this is like Grandia a bit. So yeah, and there's a lot of great world building in the show. You learn a lot about the structure of the society in the city, and the politics when it comes to the cave raiders and everything, and the inner workings of the abyss. Even though you don't really learn anything about the rest of the world, like this city of Orth is basically set on an island in a giant sea. I forgot what the name of that sea was. They mentioned it in the beginning of the show. And then, the city is like centered around the abyss. And that's it. You don't learn really, or I don't think I missed it, but you don't really learn what the rest of the world is like in this series. Like maybe we later in the manga they address that, but this is basically just focused on this one giant town that a lot of people flock to because there are these mysteries in the abyss, these artifacts which are very valuable and powerful, like have magical properties and everything, and are like basic. This mix of magic and science, or it might all be science, but it's so advanced that it comes across like magic. There are weapons, there are tools and everything, and it's like this. Okay, this feels like down in the abyss there was like this lost civilization which was a lot more advanced than whoever came after them, and now they're venturing down to the core of the earth and finding these remnants of this lost civilization. So this is all feels like really cool. But boy oh boy, if you think this is mostly a fun adventure story with a few mysteries here and there, like I expected it to be, then you will be sorely mistaken. This is a very dark show. It doesn't feel like it in the beginning because it leans more heavily on establishing characters and uses more comedy to make them sympathetic and stuff. But man, once Rico and Rek begin their journey into the abyss, shit gets more fucked up with every episode than I could have imagined. It's harsh. So the deeper the layer of the abyss, the more dangerous it becomes. More dangerous predators, more deadly terrain, and a very special kind of hell waiting for our main characters, the curses. So curses are kind of a magical ailment that are part of the very atmosphere of the abyss. It works like this kind of magic field that you can dive into, but you can't really get out of again without losing something or getting harmed. And it manifests in different ways, but basically it comes down to physical and mental torment for whoever travels into the darkest depths of the abyss. From a certain point onward, you basically can't climb back up without becoming sick or hallucinating or even dying. So yeah, you better know what you're in for when you climb down there. Rek is kind of exempt from that because he's a robot, but the shit some other characters in that show go through is harrowing. And the show is really not afraid of showing you every gut-wrenching detail. There's a particular episode in the last third of the show that is a real stomach-turner, and if you're squeamish about seeing lovable characters who have become like really endearing to you and took like a place in your heart, if you're really squeamish about seeing those come to bodily harm, you should prepare yourself, because the show will not spare your feelings. Not at all. In many different ways, actually, because the emotional turmoil the characters and you as the viewer suffer through are often even more of a gut punch than the physical stuff. And by now you may be wondering, well, why should I want to watch that show then? Because this sounds really depressing and and sad and everything. Well, amazing visuals aside, this is just a really emotionally gripping tale with two super sympathetic main characters. Rico and Rek are one of the best main leads or lead team I have seen in anime in quite a while. The reason the dark stuff hits so hard is because those two pull you immediately on their side in the course of the very first episode, actually. And yeah, they're fun, they deeply care for each other. Rico is super optimistic and, against all odds, and there are a lot of odds. And she goes through a lot of stuff, and still she has like this very positive worldview and, unwavering spirit. And Rek would and does go through hell for Rico. He's just like, they become just these pair of really good friends, and you're like, oh my god, I really want to see those two kids succeed. They're just super engaging, like super sympathetic, well-written, interesting characters. And I have to give huge props to both voice actors, Miyu Tomita as Rico and Maria Ise as Reg, who deliver just outstanding performances all the way through. This is some of the best work I've seen in anime in, I don't know, forever. Especially in those key emotional moments. They just, grab your heart and stomach with an iron grip and don't let go. It's just, this is amazing to what lengths they go to bring across the emotions in those scenes. And it works. It really, really works. It's really good stuff. But the show also has a lot of fantastic side characters. Two mains aside, I mean, that would be fine if it were just them. But it's also, a lot of great other people surrounding those, and that they meet and learn stuff from them and everything, and talk to. I would have to go into spoilers to name some of them and to tell you why they are so great. But trust me, you'll come out of this show loving at least one other character besides the two mains, feel really ambivalent about another one, and really fucking hate a certain character because the show gives you a damn good reason to want to see that asshole die screaming in agony. Like, damn. It's like, wow, that is an asshole that I want to punch in the face. And I hope the show goes there maybe eventually. I loved it. I love this series. I'm always fond of adventure anime with this kind of setup, but just like The Abyss, this had much more layers than I expected, and it was just a dark, engrossing tale that I did not see coming, and that kept me on the edge of my seat for pretty much all of its episodes. Even though it's not necessarily a fast-paced show, yes, you learn some important truths about The Abyss, like some really big stuff, like big reveals about Riko's mom and Riko herself. And they definitely are doozy. But the show takes a lot of time to let important moments and character confrontations breathe. And I really appreciated that. That is I don't know how much of that is in the manga, but things you see when, these days, especially when a manga get adapted into anime, is that when they adhere too close to the source material, a lot of stuff feels rushed. Because, some moments gain if you let them breathe and take a bit more time, to let the atmosphere sink and certain developments sink in. And anime can do that really well. And sometimes they don't do that in direct adaptation just to hurry the story along and get stuff done, which is also good in certain parts. Some stuff doesn't need filler. But while I'm not sure, I feel like this show implemented some longer lasting moments that really, filled up the story nicely and increased the atmosphere and made you feel like you're living in that world as well. So, yeah. Like I said, I can't be sure because I haven't read the manga, but it felt like it took some extra time and extra care in certain parts to make you really get invested into the characters and the world of the show, of the series. Yeah, I really recommend this show for anyone who is interested in a cool looking adventure, fantasy mystery stuff, and who is not faint-hearted. Because, like I said, you need a strong stomach, strong will for the show. I don't know if we'll get another season of this, but I really hope so, because I definitely want to know how the story continues. And I enjoyed the visuals and voice work and presentation in the anime so much that it would feel like I'm missing out if I read the manga instead. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna wait for now. Maybe we'll get lucky and we get more. I mean, like I said, the manga is still running. I don't know how many chapters the series covered. But I feel like there's a lot more room to get this stuff done, and maybe we get an announcement sooner or later. The show doesn't get an anime original ending or anything; it's super open, and basically, Reg and Riko, without giving too much away, are still on that journey at the end of that series of that first season, which is hopefully not the last. So yeah, I really hope there will be more.
Well, from what I had heard and read, apparently, it was very well received. So I would be very surprised if it didn't get another season sometime down the line. My only fear for you and the others who are are looking forward to more of it, is that it doesn't, end up being one of those shows that switches studios for
Yeah.
the worse, like some upcoming stuff stuff in the past that's happened to, because that's always unfortunate when you have this foundation built and it's great and it's fantastic, and then you hand it off to someone who doesn't know or doesn't understand what the amount of work that was put into it beforehand. So
Yeah, or doesn't pay attention to what made that first adaptation so great, or what are the important parts to pay attention to in the source material. Yeah, so here's hoping that this team at Kinema Citrus will continue the adaptation of this, and that the source material will stay as strong as it has been till now. So amazing stuff. Yeah, Made in Abyss, a dark tale of a girl and a robot boy basically descending into hell. But I'm holding out hope there's some kind of a at least bittersweet, if not happy ending waiting for them at the end of this cruel journey. I definitely want to see it through, just like they do, and if you give the show a chance, maybe you will too.
So, the other show we're going to talk about today is Sakura Quest. It's all about this girl, Yoshino Koharu. She's tired of her rural home. She's a recent college graduate, and she's desperate to lead a more exciting life in Tokyo. She goes on a job hunt, and it basically leads nowhere. And this all sounds very true to life because, well, at one point, she finally receives a part-time job offer as the quote-unquote queen of the kingdom of Chupacabra, which is a rundown attraction in this small agricultural town called Manoyama, which is like out in the sticks. It's nowhere. It's the middle of Podunk. So when Yoshino, she decides to take the job, and she arrives in Manoyama only to find that it's a case of mistaken identity, and they thought they were hiring someone else for the job. Oops. But she's left with not many other options, and she sort of reluctantly takes on the role to aid the Board of Tourism to help revitalize this edge of nowhere town. And she's just determined to bring excitement back to it with the help of the local residents, and she takes up the moniker of Queen to put them back on the map, as it were. So Yoshino is aided by a whole motley crew of characters, like the crotchety old head of the tourism board, a guy named Mr. Kadota, a local girl and one of the tourism board co-workers, Shiori, this amateur actress, Maki, this girl obsessed with the occult named Ririko, and this internet entrepreneur who also made the transition of moving from Tokyo out to this edge of nowhere town, Sanae. And that's more or less where the story begins.
And I assume it's going to be basically about the misadventures of, the core cast of those girls.
It is very much about the trials and errors of trying to make a name for, not only yourself, but for, this small town that is on the brink of basically going to pieces. So this is one of PA Works' shows, and they've done all manner of great shows in the past. Like they've done stuff like Angel Beat, Hanasaku Iroha, Shiro Bako, which are those two are basically, they're all sort of like part of this same like working series, as it were.
Yeah. I've heard that this is kind of a spiritual sequel to Shirobako, and that it has kind of the same atmosphere, kind of, set up in terms of cast of characters and everything, and it's about, workplace environment, be it a special one. In Shirobako, it's, producing an anime. Here is, yeah, bringing a make-believe kingdom and tourism to life to a small town. So, yeah, just in terms of tone and atmosphere, this seems to be in the same vein as at least Shirobako, because I haven't seen the other ones.
Yeah, I'd say they're pretty much all spiritual successors to one another.
Okay.
I mean, I have not yet watched Hanasaku Iroha. I would like to make the time to, though, because I've heard all manner of good things. I did watch Shirobako while it was airing before this show, and that was an interesting show. It was sort of a neat insight on some of the parts of the anime industry. You know, a little. You could argue it's a little candy coated, but it gave more insight than a lot of other stories on that line of work have given, I feel like. Unless, you're getting actual word of mouth from someone who's been in the trenches at one of these studios. Some of those stories are, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, a little bit of mystery with this, though. The original creator is credited as someone named Alexander S.D. Salibidashe.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and I tried researching this name, and everything that came back just pointed right back to Sakura Quest. So it was like, I have no idea who this person is. Maybe it's an alias. I
would assume this is an alias.
It must be, or I'm not sure. Or it could be one of those, like, this is what we're going to name our production committee.
Is that a thing? Like,
I mean, some shows, they take on production committee names that are after, like, elements in their material, but
okay.
I'm not sure. I really don't. I wish I could have found more information about this, but like I said, everything, it was just like a circular sort of thing. Alexander Sakura Quest. And it was like, oh, thanks. The internet has not worked out for me this day. But I can give information about some of the rest of the staff, though. Like, it was directed by Soichi Masui, who's worked on some really good stuff in the past, like Brotherhood Final Fantasy 15.
Mm-hmm.
Chaika,
yes,
and Scrapped Princess.
It's been ages since I've seen Scrapped Princess. Christ.
Yeah, same. Holy shit.
I remember not being too fond of the ending of that show for some reason. Maybe it was too rushed. I think that was it, and that was the same for Chaika.
Yeah,
but
they could have taken like maybe one more episode.
Yeah. I feel like Chaika could have used another season. But I don't know.
I'd say, maybe someday. But, I think the ending of that was pretty definite.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, yeah. But aside from that, like, at least the first, 90% of those shows were cool. So.
Yeah, so we have, solid directorial work on this show, and it really comes through. So, some of the people worked on the composition and script. We have Masahiro Yokotani, who worked on stuff like Excel World, Free, Magi, Steins Gate. So again, all solid stuff in the past. I mean, I'm sure people will fight me on Excel World, but I kind of enjoyed it for what it was.
This is an anime original story, right? This is not based on light novel or anything. Okay.
I think out of the 3 working series that PA Works has done, the only one that was based on manga was Hanasaku Iroha. The other 2 are just anime original series. One of the other writers on the show was Shingo Irie. Probably know him from Log Horizon and Kuroko's Basketball, which is something I know you love.
Oh yeah, I do. Still haven't seen the movie, though.
And the music was done by a group named No Name, who apparently also did the music for Grimgar, A Fantasy in Ash. You watched Grimgar. Do you recall if the music in that was any good, or?
I don't recall it being bad.
Okay.
I think it was good, but it's been too many shows since then.
Yeah. I mean, the music in this show is pretty good. It had, a lot of good mood matching stuff to go along with everything that was happening.
I mean, I mean, I don't know if you want to go into the show specific yet, but when I watched the first episode, this mainly struck me as a comedy slice of life thing, like not super dramatic or anything. Am I right with that assessment, or is this going like into more, I don't know, life like dramatic stuff in terms of people in crises when it comes to planning their lives and everything, or is this pretty lightweight when it comes to the drama?
I mean, I feel like the story carries enough emotional weight such that, this is a town that is struggling to keep itself together, or because people have moved away. There's not many tourists that come through,
Which is a very real and contemporary problem in Japan.
right.
So a lot of people like moving out of the country to the cities because they don't, for several reasons, don't want to live their lives on the countryside and everything. And this is basically the country's side of Japan is dying because there's only old folks there. And
Yeah,
there's some anime that have made that a subject. I think Wolf Children also had parts of that in it. And this was, this felt like a very real aspect, and the show, like, even in its first episode, to me, it felt like the show wanted to really drive this home, like, hey, there is some merit to living here. This almost felt like kind of an advertisement for, those parts of Japan, this is worth, like, keeping this alive, and people who live here, who see this part dying, they're suffering, like. And I wonder how far the show goes into that. Like, is it really digging deep into that stuff, into that commentary, or is it like basically trying to be like an optimistic comedy based outlook on the whole thing?
I mean, they definitely, sort of hammer you over the head with that theme, as you might imagine, but I don't feel like it's, and even though there are some heavy moments, it's not all throughout. It's enough to be like, to not feel like, going back to the show we were talking about earlier about Made in Abyss, where, hey, this seems like it's going to be fun. Oh, no. No, it's not like that at all.
Okay, it didn't come across like that. So.
No. I mean, you see them running the gamut of all sorts of things to do, like having local festivals, like taking out ads on like the internet as well as on TV. They go on a TV show to try and build interest in Monoyama, and it's just interesting to see, how can we make this happen? Oh, let's do this. And then when it doesn't work out, then you see them going through the whole process of trying to workshop all of their ideas and trying to figure out something that, because if you say one thing about, oh, hey, come to our middle of nowhere town, you're not going to drive people out there that easily. That's a fact.
Yeah, sure.
In the scope of the show, as well as in real life. Like if you live in, I don't know, New York City, let's say that. I don't know how incentivized you are to go out to the middle of
Kansas
or Oklahoma, or just, for this one thing. And also granted, that's not an equal comparison because that distance is much larger because Japan compared to the United States is a much smaller country.
But still, it's like, there's a bristling life in the big cities and there's the, quiet country life where not much is happening and not that many jobs, or not as many in the city at least, and not as varied. So yeah, I guess there are a lot of, I assume there are a lot of adversities they have to overcome to make this stuff interesting. And I assume the main bulk of character development comes from overcoming like these different obstacles and growing with that, like coming up with new ideas and becoming better and more invested into making this project happen.
Yeah, and I mean it also has to deal with again, this is a very true to life story. Dealing with research. What are people most interested in? What can we do to drive people to come out here, sort of thing? Because they have, like I said, a local festival. They bring in this popular band that they have a show out there, and that brings some tourism out that way. But it becomes very apparent to them that a lot of what they're doing are more like Band-Aid fixes, as it were.
Mm.
Um,
So, well, and I want. I mean, it's difficult to talk about, the course the show takes without going into spoilers, because the one thing I want to know and ask is, do they succeed? And that's probably like the end point of the show, where it's like, okay,
yeah,
did it work out or didn't it? I mean, or does it even matter? Like, does it only work out half, or they end the show with, well, we made a few right steps, but we still have to work on this. I don't know. Or does the town shut down and it's like this bittersweet ending? I
mean, the show it's a good show, but it is difficult to talk about just because of the nature of its conceit.
Yeah.
Because if I, you go if I say, oh, they managed to blah, 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 then you get straight to the end point, and it's like, then you don't get to see. You get to the point, you don't understand any of the bumps along the way. You don't get any of the character development, because the characters are all really interesting, and it's. I think that was probably one of the best parts of it was them growing together and learning how they can make the best use of their talents and knowledge in order to move forward with the steps to getting people to Manoyama and making it relevant again.
Okay. This show has 25 episodes, and that kind of surprised me. I expected this to be like a one-season show, like 12 or 13 episodes. So how's the pacing? Is it like, does it feel like there's like too much dead air in that show, or is enough stuff happening, and do you learn enough stuff about the characters on a regular basis? Is there enough development on a regular basis that you feel like, okay, there is something happening here in each episode that's interesting, that makes it an interesting watch all the way through? Or do you feel like, okay, they maybe could have shortened this to one season?
I think shortening it to one season would probably be doing this show a discredit. But I don't know. It works across the length it did, but maybe if it were... I mean, there are shows lengths there are shows that have irregular lengths all the time, so maybe they could have shortened it slightly by a few episodes, but I think if they had gone down to 12 or 13, they wouldn't have been able to tell the story the way it played out properly,
Yeah.
So that's kind of a tough call to make, but as it stands, it told its story and the backstories of all the characters pretty competently.
So you were saying that one of the most engaging points of this show, as expected, I think that was also one of the highlights of Shirobako, are the characters themselves. So one of my favorite questions, of course, is who was your favorite character in the show?
You always do this to me.
Yes, and I enjoy it very much.
All right. When we talk about picking favorite characters, I always end up, I feel like, going with the character I feel like I most identify with. And that's really sort of tough in this situation because, I like Yoshino a lot because I'm sort of in the same place as her, out of school but without a real job. And I feel like, hey, we ain't so different, you and I. But, all of the other characters have their own quirks that, make them really neat too. And
I mean, that's a good problem to have, like having too many endearing characters that are very identifiable and sympathetic and everything. So, I don't know. I mean, could be worse. You could hate everybody in that cast.
Oh, God. There's not many shows where I say I hate everyone. But when, I get one of those, I can't watch it. I think we're going to talk about something next week, though, where I can very easily say that. But this show, on the whole, though, it's got, great animation. PA Works are really good at what they do. One of the things that they really do best are backdrops. All of their background work is incredible. So it's definitely got that going for it. But yeah, and just to hammer this point home one more time, it had a very diverse cast, and they all played really well off of each other. The premise is very easily, identifiable. It's easy. I feel like it's easy to get on the level with and understand.
Well, sure, it's like it's not like an outlandish story or anything.
Right.
Like you said, it's very down to earth. It's very real. Hits close to home and everything for a lot of people. And there, there are a lot of diverse characters with different, upbringings, professions, ways of life and everything, so that there's enough to cling to, I guess.
I think the only drawback for some, and I think this might have been yours, is that at points it feels a little too, laid back. A little, because I know slice of life isn't your thing.
Yeah, that's the main problem. It's like that's not the fault of the show. It's probably my fault because it's just not. I like my plot-driven shows. That's how it is. I occasionally enjoy, relaxing slice of life shows. I enjoyed Flying Witch a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But there has to be a hook to it, and most, science fiction, supernatural, fantasy, and Flying Witch, that was the witch stuff. I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is like basically, a very slow slice of life thing, but there is this one aspect to it that is different and weird, and I like that. And I, that's what I cling to. And then, the slice of life stuff is for the rest of it. I can sit through this, but for Sakura Quest, and it was the same for Shirobako, it's like, which is weird even though, because, Shirobako was about producing anime, and that's something that interests me, kind of. But still, it's like, all these shows, these slice of life shows about work stuff are not that interesting to me, because that's not what I watch anime for. It's not, I don't like watching people, doing their everyday life, especially if it's something, pretty standard, like working at a tourist promotion thing. That can be fun, that can be entertaining, but that's just not something I look for when I watch anime. So it's like, okay, cool, this is might be a fun, interesting story with cool characters, but just the subject matter, there is not a hook for me. That was the main problem. And when I watched the first episode, I was like, okay, this seems like a cool, solid show with interesting characters, well animated, like you said, nice backdrops and everything. Nothing wrong with it. It's just not my cup of tea. And that's it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Like they say, different strokes for different folks.
Yes, exactly. Who still says that, though?
I do sometimes.
Okay, all right.
I guess the final takeaway from this show is that if you like stuff like Shirobako and Hanasaku Iroha, you will, in all likelihood, enjoy this.
And that is a wrap on the 39th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter @AnyBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
See you later, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
Mystery show full of mystery. What could it be? I don't know. Do you know?
Also, knights, magic, mechs, and a borderline sociopathic prodigy.
And steampunk spies in a game of deception in the city of London.